Hey, this is John Smith from WireData.net, and some of you may know me from my other two blogs, Zentrifuge.com or EdgeSite Under the Hood. Some of you may have noticed I've been writing actually quite a bit about my new favorite product called Extrahop. Most of the time I write about Extrahop as a performance management tool or as a tool to consume wire data to kind of get an idea of the user's experience. But today I want to talk a little bit about how to leverage Extrahop as a security tool. More specifically, for this video, monitoring your ingress with the flow tick trigger object. And what that is, I'll cover it here real quick. What that is it is, as of 3.9, you are able to actually syslog or write triggers on layer 4 traffic. So this means you'll be able to see all layer 4 conversations between two hosts. So a lot of times if you look at this trigger, what you see is a basic debug here, and then you'll see I'm syslogging, and I'm syslogging the event flow tick, I'm syslogging the client and server IP, the server port, whether or not the client or server aborted the connection, and then for most of what I do, the round trip time showing the performance between two hosts. And this is all very good, especially when it's coupled with the flow turn trigger object. But it also has significant value from a security standpoint, being able to monitor ingress in terms of if you suspect a particular server is infected or if a client is engaging in behavior they're not supposed to. Extrahop offers the ability to grab this data in real time right off the wire in a similar manner that IDSs and IPSs do, only they're able to give you the type of data that then you can look at and interpret whether something is going on that's a concern. An IDS or an IPS can't look and say, hey, that client shouldn't be talking to that server, or this server shouldn't be communicating over that port. You need something that's non-algorithm based. You need a human to look at that and say, hey, that doesn't make sense. So let's talk about monitoring ingress from, or at least monitoring the client IP with flow tick. So let's take a look at that. Now, what we're going to have to understand here is that we're going to have to use the terms client and server kind of loosely, right? If my Windows workstation is being accessed and someone's connecting to it, obviously the Windows workstation is functioning as a server, and if the machine that's doing that and accessing, let's say I have a CIFS share with some ISOs on it, if the server that's accessing it, just because it's running a server operating system, it's still acting as a client. So you're going to have to decouple our normal idea of client and server. I'm not talking about the OS. I'm talking about who's asking for data and who's giving data. So let's first just take a look at the flow tick object in general. So I'll paste this in here. And I'm going to go out, let's say I'm going to go out 15 minutes. I don't want to do real time yet. Now, as you just saw there, Extrahop is feeding Splunk in real time there. So you do get the data within 30 seconds, sometimes a little bit, maybe a minute, because you have to wait for Splunk. But Extrahop sends that data to Splunk within a matter of seconds. So what we're looking at, if I'm looking at this not from a performance-based set of glasses, but with a security set of glasses, what I'm looking at is a client IP, a server IP, and the ports. And the big question I ask is, should server IP 192.168.1.53 be providing access over port 1433? Well, that is my SQL server, so this connection, this layer 4 connection makes sense. If this were a high port or a port that I didn't recognize, or if this was coming, say, let's say this is a web server and that's a SQL server, that's acceptable. But maybe you don't want a bunch of clients connecting directly to the SQL server. Maybe the SQL server is there just for servicing requests from the web, and someone is trying to grab your CRM data off of it because they're about to leave the company or store it on their laptop. So what I look for in the client IP is, are all of these acceptable clients for these servers, and are they communicating on an acceptable port? And these are very important from an InfoSec standpoint that an IDS or an algorithm-based security solution is not going to see. That's something that you as a sysadmin are going to see. So let's drill down a little further. Let's take a look at one of our clients. So here I'm going to look at a particular workstation, 192.168.1.32, and what I'm getting is the client IP. This is on my local internal network, and these are the external connections that it's made. And if you look, they all look okay. They all 80 and 443. I can live with this. This looks like acceptable web traffic. What you want to look for here is if you see something that's out of the ordinary, right? Something like if I were connecting to a server and it was over some bizarre high port, that's definitely something to be concerned with. And if we want to drill a little further, we can actually come here. We can actually look at what I'm doing here is I'm getting the server port and I'm getting the number of connections it made over that port. One connection over port 27,622 may not be something to be concerned about. However, if you see 10,000 connections over a high port, that might be something that's very significant. So those are some of the things you have to worry about in terms of looking at the data, in particular the flow tick data. So again, keep in mind, we're still monitoring client IPs. So this is the port and this is the number of connections. If I go out a little further, I should see a little bit more data. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold today. So here I see some DNS traffic, I see some SSL traffic, and I see some port 80 traffic. None of this is particularly bothersome. In fact, if I want to see the very servers they connected to, so this will give me a look at, for this client, and what I'm counting here, the count, whenever an entry comes into Splunk, it's assigned an underscore time value. So what I'm doing is I'm counting the number of time values, because I know that will be unique, and then I'm grabbing the server IP and the server port. And here are all of the server IPs it made a connection to. Now you could import a malware database and actually cross-reference that here with Splunk if you want to, and you can see if it's making a connection to either a spamming site or a malware site or an untrusted site. And in addition to that, you can also get the number of connections that they have. So if normal usage patterns show this particular IP address making, a couple hundred connections a day, and then all of a sudden you see 160,000 connections made to an IP address in Russia, that's definitely something that you have to be concerned about. And likewise, I can also get just the server IP and the connections it made. And then one of the nicer things about integrating Extrahop with Splunk, keep in mind Extrahop is actually feeding this data actively to Splunk. One of the other things I like is if you install Google Maps into Splunk, you can actually geocode the connections. So let's take a look at some of these. These are kind of significant. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a look at the flow tick data. I'm using a regular expression to get the IP address so that I can do a reverse lookup of it. And then what I'm able to do is grab the stats, the total number of instances, by server IP, by IP address, by server port, and then I'm getting this geo data here with the city and region and country. And here are all of the connections that were made from, this is the server IP, this is the IP that they connected to, and then this is the server port that was incoming. So this is ingress traffic. So these are web servers that are being accessed by external servers. And as you can see, someone from Shanghai connected to one of my web servers. Luckily, there's an app firewall and a NetScaler in front of it. Someone from Japan. So these are all connections that are coming in, and in fact, they are real time. And just to show you that they're real time, and we may have to wait 30 seconds for this, but I'm going to go to my iPad, and I'm just going to refresh here. And what this should do is show eventually a connection from the Clearwater area, because that's where I live here in St. Petersburg, but ISP is in Clearwater. So what's going to happen is we should eventually see some connectivity as I continue to connect. And I'm trying to just surf my internal website. What you should see, and there you see a connection from Clearwater, Florida, and connecting in here. If you notice, I do the reverse lookup, so I also have the reverse record that I'm connecting to. So anyway, that covers monitoring your client-based traffic with Extrahop, and this is just one other really good way to use Extrahop as a security tool. There are more videos to come. Thanks a lot for watching.